Can people just confirm that they can see my shared screen?
I can see. It's Michael Pullin.
Hello, this is Bennett.
Hi, this is John Jorgensen.
Hey, John, this is Bennett Frazier.
I'm pleased to meet you.
Good to meet you. Where are you from, John?
I'm down here in Houston.
You're down in
How about
Houston.
you?
I'm up in Plano.
In where?
Plano.
Oh, Plano, up by Dallas. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Well, guys, it's possibly you have a midday meeting. We here in UK have late evening.
So you wanted to end your day talking with a bunch of Yanks, eh?
Well, I've just got back from Florida, so I'm kind of used to that.
Hey, don't denigrate the Yanks. They're the ones that take the good ideas from the British and make them commercial successes. Okay, I think we'll start. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like we've got about 10 people online. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Lots of people are muted, which are fine, but just I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah, can hear you fine.
Loud and clear.
Good.
Can hear you well.
So the
Good.
first thing I wanted to say really is that some of you may or may not know me. I'm not the easiest person to get along with. I'm quite straight talking. In fact, what I will do is, just by way of introduction, let me just read you something which is on the back of all of my books as by way of an introduction of myself. And it says, I'll just bring this up. move this window out of the way. I have too many windows. Kevin's professional career in enterprise transformation began in 1980. MBTI and DISC says that he is a result-oriented, independent, individualistic visionary. However, he also freely admits that he is an arrogant, inflexible, argumentative, intolerant, impatient, critical, and stubborn skeptimist. So I'm quite well aware of my downsides, but I think I do have a few upsides as well, in that I try to, I don't know, break things down and get to the core understanding of things. So thank you all for attending, coming on this initial call. I just wanted to give a kind of a brief introduction as to what I think this Gaeae thing is all about, why I want to kind of start it, and where it's coming from. But one thing I want to get clear straight off the bat: this is not a vehicle for Kevin Smith or Pragmatic or Piaf to get more sales, more marketing, more anything like that. In fact, the sooner somebody comes and wants to take this thing out of my hands and put it in someone else's hands and run it and drive this thing forward, the better. I'm just kind of maybe I'm the catalyst. So just to give you a little bit of background, there's many, I'm not coming at this from the point of view of enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture is only one part of the whole transformation domain. And the whole transformation domain starts off with strategy kind of work, goes into EA kind of work, which is road mapping, then goes into project execution work of architecture and design and construction and testing and building and all of that kind of stuff. So what I'm looking at is the entire transformation domain, not just enterprise architecture. And I believe the two fundamentally important disciplines in that environment is architecture and engineering, in the same way that architecture and engineering are fundamentally important disciplines in building buildings, in building aircraft, in building anything. I just wanted to quickly start by saying a little bit about this, if hopefully you can all see my screen. CAEAP, FIPO and MITRE, these are organizations which kind of sort of maybe try to do the kind of thing that I want to do, that is create some kind of a profession, but their domain was only enterprise architecture, not the whole of the transformation domain. So whilst I'm going to talk about them, my my kind of view for Gaeae is not only EA, it's for the whole transformation domain. So the problem with these kind of organizations or comings together of people is that they all try to own enterprise architecture, or they all try to own the domain that they were talking about. They appointed unelected important people who had important meetings and decided important things. And as such, I don't think they really went anywhere. I think CAP is maybe dead already. FIPO is barely alive. MITRE is what we might call it in England, moribund. EA BOK, actually...
Just before you jump ahead there, Kevin, one of the ones that I would want to put in there as well would be AEA. As I am a member of AEA, I don't consider it to be a great organization by any means, but I think they deserve recognition.
Yep, I put AEA in there. I put brackets TOGAF because they're basically a TOGAF shop. It was created by the Open Group and driven by TOGAF. But yeah, you're correct, yeah.
And I can add that FIAP is quite alive and very well in line with Open Group, the Open Group.
Who's
very
alive?
Well.
Who's alive, sorry?
It's FIAPO, very much alive.
FIPO.
We have it. FIAPO.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, FIPO, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of, yeah. So the main thing is all of these groups are targeted at enterprise architecture. You have other groups targeted at solution architecture or agile or whatever, or business architecture or business analysis. My view is, having worked in the transformation domain, and when I use the word transformation, I'm not using the word in a special way to mean kind of big change. I'm just using the word transformation in to replace all words you might use for change, any types of change. So my background is working in that environment at all levels, from, you know, data entry to junior programmer through architect and all the rest of it. And I think that one of the problems with all of these groups is they're all isolated groups, because the stakeholders of any enterprise do not care about these groups. They only care about the end-to-end efficiency and effectiveness of their transformation domain, of which all these subdomains form part. So there's no point talking to the business or senior people in an organization about enterprise architecture. They don't care about enterprise architecture. They don't care about agile or business, they don't care about any of these things. What they care about is they have a strategy and they want change coming out the bottom. So that's why my domain of interest is the entire transformation domain. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about EA BOK, because some people have emailed me about, oh, no, EA BOK is still going. Some EA BOK work that I was involved in was started by Alex Matthews in February of 2012. He proposed a group of people, of which I was one. You all probably know a lot of these names. Some other suggestions. Unfortunately, Len is not with us anymore. Rest in peace. Very good man. Through that, we had various discussions and conversations, and out of that, Nick Malik registered the eabok.org domain in March of 2012. Through our discussions about the EA BOK, Nick Malik quite correctly said, you know what, we need to involve someone with resources, some body that has money to spend, so that we can push these things forward, because, you know, we can discuss about how these things should go forward, but without resource, it's not going to happen. So he entered into conversations with MITRE around August 2013, and we had noted that MITRE published a draft document about an EA BOK in February of 2004, so 15 years ago. But apart from that draft, and it was a draft, it never even moved past the draft stage. So MITRE wrote this EA BOK paper in 2004, it never went anywhere. Around about the same, sort of the following year in August, Nick started talking to MITRE. MITRE kind of took over and made promises to Nick that it would be run by reasonable people in a reasonable way and all the rest of it. Various promises were made. All of those were broken, and the people who were involved left. IEEE were kicked out. FIPO, I think, were kicked out. And it all kind of collapsed, basically. MITRE took control. Because MITRE owned the trademark of EA BOK, they essentially told Nick Malik, even though you bought eabok.org, we own it, you better sign it over to us. So he signed it over to us, and from that point, literally nothing happened with it. So eabok.org, the website, is exactly the same as it was about 6 years ago. Nothing has moved on at all. So again, an organization took control of the EA BOK. Oh, we bought the domain, we got the trademark and all that, and important people were involved. Nothing actually happened. So I don't want that to happen again. So I want people who know what they're talking about get involved and run this stuff, not people who want to own it and who are more, you know, well, just from that domain. So why am I doing this? I want it to be a professional body for all people working in the transformation domain and formalizing that work. We cannot go forward the way we are. The 70% project failure that I I met in 1980 when I was starting is exactly the same in 2019. It's ridiculous. And the reason is because we have people doing jobs that they're not qualified to do. We have people being called architects that are not architects. We have people who are supposedly software engineers that are not software engineers. We just need more formality. That's not saying that the people involved and that are doing very good jobs at the moment are bad people. They just work within the environment they're given. I'm aiming to change the environment. There's red stuff come from. Is someone writing on my screen? That's quite good. Someone's managed to write red, red on my screen. Oh well. Well done, whoever that was.
I think somebody's trying to give you some blue lines in red ink.
Yeah. So I've worked most of my life in IT, although for the past 10 years being involved in EA, i.e. property EA, I've been more involved hopefully in the business than I have in IT, although people always push you into IT. So people working in that domain, they're all part of the same church, but they don't have a kind of a single church to go to. And yeah, there's this thing that everyone's called an architect these days just because that's a role or a title that you get if you know, it gives you more money. Doesn't mean that you're actually an architect. As I've said before, I've seen various attempts of building a profession. They've always failed. I think mainly because it's not been driven by the grassroots. I want an organization that's a proper association driven by the grassroots who elect people. I don't know anyone in AEA or is part of AEA who knows who's running AEA, who owns it, for example. Did anybody vote those people into place? Probably not. Yeah, there are some initiatives getting traction like PMBOK and BABOK. I would say that I don't see project management being part of this association, as that's kind of a management discipline. But business analysis, I would expect to be part of this, because business and IT and anything kind of structural like that should be part of this. The business should be architected and engineered in the same way that IT should be architected and engineered. Well, not in the same way, but you know, that discipline should be applied.
Hey, Kevin.
Yep.
You caught my attention when you said that project management will not be part of this. Some of the EA efforts that I've been a party to that were not as successful was because we did not embrace some project management methodology in terms of managing the scope and monitoring to make sure that we did have the right people on the job with the right skills and things like that, that normally architects would not be as desired. You know, most architects I've met would prefer not to do project management, but I think you need some semblance of organization, as you mentioned earlier, in order to be successful. So I'm not sure what we call it or how it fits, but there's probably a piece of that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think you're right there. As you may have seen, I've reached the limit of my sorry, I'm just gonna have to buy.
We'll put another quarter in.
Yeah, I've got to buy some eggs onto Zoom, otherwise it's gonna end this goddamn thing. So you're all gonna.
Kevin, while you busy with buying, I sent a common message about business architecture. Actually, architecture of business system, business organization. When you or we talk about transformation, do you consider IT only, or also the business part of the company as well?
No, it's not. Definitely not just IT. No, I'm talking about enterprise transformation, and enterprise transformation includes anything to do with enterprise transformation. So that definitely includes the business.
Thank you.
And you can all steal my credit card details. I suppose I should move this on the screen, shouldn't I, really?
Oh, please don't be so fast.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. I'm so
Don't worry, Kevin. I already have them.
good. If you send them to me later, that'd be fine. I'm not a
Hey,
robot.
I tried to buy something with it right now. And it says it's over your limit. What's all that about?
That's because I'm on the free thing, and you only get 10 minutes of more than one other person on the call. So I'm having to buy the. Oh, it wants my bleedy VAT registered number. Turn that off. Hang on. Sorry, people. Just, this is what happens when you processing credit card. Okay, we're nearly there, guys. We can carry on. The world will not end.
Well, I wanted to.
Can I throw in?
I wanted to agree that you need to. As far as transformation is concerned, it's inclusive of business, IT, architecture, whatever you want to call it, because in order to transform a company, you have to have buy-in by not only your BAs, but your enterprise architects, your CIO, in the whole gambit, your PPM, and they all work together in order to figure out what it is that you can do to transform a corporation. And one of the things I run into is when you start talking about transforming, a lot of places suffer from what I call the halo effect. They're making money, therefore they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of work through that whole aspect when you're trying to transform a corporation.
Yeah, I agree. And I've just made a note here to include PM. I think you're right. I'm wrong. I'm trying to limit it to engineers and architects, but it's literally the whole transformation domain that's the problem.
Kevin.
The whole transformation domain that we need to mature. The only reason I didn't include PM is because there is already a lot of work being done in PM BOK, and I didn't want to trod on their toes. However, yes, I think it should be included. So maybe what we want to build here is an association that other BOKs can plug into, maybe, rather than building those BOKs ourselves.
Can I throw in on that one?
Yep.
In that, one of the things that stands out for me, I'm very much a believer in the analogy with traditional building, and that we as architects design what is going to be built. The project manager then works with a master builder to figure out how it's going to be built, how much that build is going to cost, and so on. So I've always looked at PM as being a very different thing from architecture. However, that doesn't mean we can design things that a project manager can't build. Yep. And so it's a case of working with them. So I think it's, for me, something where that would be having a strong alliance with something like PM BOK. Definitely, I don't think PM in itself is anything to do with us directly.
Yeah, I think I agree. In the last couple of years, actually, I've been, in inverted commas, architecting a house, i.e. drawing diagrams that I give to an architect who actually does an architect's job. But part of that work is it's very interesting to learn from those people. And whilst, you can say that architecting a building is different from architecting an enterprise, you could also say there are literally some fundamentals in architecture, in architecting buildings, that apply to architecting enterprises or aeroplanes or boats or whatever it is. There must be these fundamentals, and it's kind of those fundamentals I've been chasing. So yeah, I think PM, we've got to include it in some way. If it's not included in what we're trying to do, then a very close tie to it.
Yeah, let me clarify what I meant when I said including PM before. I'm not referring to the PM who is going to implement the solutions based on the architectural artifacts. I'm actually talking about applying some PM principles to the development of the artifacts themselves and how the architecture process is approached That's what I'm referring to. So you almost need a EA/PM that's going to develop the architecture that will then be put out to bid or developed by the organization, maybe with another PM, most likely with another PM.
It's
I
Fred
have
Lee
comments here.
So my name is Fred Lee. I kind of agree with Chuck. So when we talk about PM, it's really about capability. So, and PM BOK is just basically is the body that hold that knowledge, the best practice around the PM. But in the same time, I think we also need to talk about change management. Like, for example, they have another organization really that champion the best practice in the change management.
I think there are two comments I have. First of all, the book, this book was written quite long ago, and modern agile approach definitely changes a lot in this book. And second, so does it make sense to reference quite close to that? The second comment is that I believe that enterprise architects must be involved in finance, in a financial work and estimates at least. Otherwise, they will stay in the ivory tower.
Well, I want to agree with you on that as well, and throw in another comment. This is Bennett Fraser. What I've always tried to do is be very inclusive of our business architects as well, because if you're going to try to follow a TOGAF type of methodology with an EA, you need to know what is the functions of the corporation, what are the capabilities that give you those functions, what are the applications that give you those capabilities, and then what is the underlying infrastructure that gives you the applications. And so you need to tie all that back down to where the business is looking at. So I'm trying to use this and transformation to get a handle off of shadow IT, where you have business analysts that go out and find a shiny new object and then come in and hire their own mercenaries to implement the shiny new object, and then go talk to IT and PM and the project portfolio management group and say, you need to integrate this in with our systems. And so that is the biggest problem that I have seen, is that we have, at the moment, most corporations that I've been working with, they have what I call chaos architecture, which means people are doing whatever they want to do, and they're using whatever tools they're trying to use, and there's not a consolidated view of anything. And if you're going to be doing a transformation, you need to be inclusive of what are the business reasons. Why is this corporation there? What is it trying to accomplish? What systems does it have? What IT does it have? And what projects are you going to use on it?
Yeah, I think the reason I started calling this architecture and engineering was because I was really concentrating on this analysis and design work that goes on in all phases, not only through project work, but through the work that has to do to create the projects in the first place, and the work that works more on the business model and the operating model, this kind of strategizing. And people are saying that maybe project management and change management have to be included, and I probably agree with that. So then we start saying, well, should we include everything? And then you're getting into the implementation. So now you're talking about implementation of processes and implementation of IT systems. So now you're into programming languages and all that kind of stuff. Whatever this thing ends up being, I don't mind. I'm just kind of offering this as a template to say, well, you know, if you're going to select things to be in or out, then this is a list of things to be in and out. And if you're going to include one thing on this list, then you either have to include everything on this list or start chopping things out. And if you're going to chop things out, then obviously you need a reason to chop them out. But I think we're getting a little bit into the detail. Let me just quickly finish running off through these things that I wanted to say, because it's been half an hour now and I wanted to put it over to what people think this association could be. So I think its aims is to formalize architects and engineers with respect to enterprise transformation, which includes business and IT change. For those people who are saying, is it only to do with IT? No, it's not. It includes business analysis as well. Why should we not have business engineers when we have IT engineers? What kind of problem domains are we looking to solve? Well, we have companies that employ these architects and engineers and project managers and whatever else you want to put on the end. We've got recruitment companies that constantly recruit for jobs that they don't understand and give those people to companies that are employing people in roles that they don't understand. And then we've actually got the architects and the engineers who actually do this work, and project managers, whatever, who, in my experience over my 40 years in industry, spend most of their days pulling their hair out saying, oh my God, why are we doing this in this way? This is ridiculous. Everybody knows it's ridiculous, but why do we keep doing it? Some services that this association might provide: learning, so teaching people how to be better architects, better engineers, better project managers, better change managers, or whatever. But I think if you cast your net too wide to start with, maybe you don't achieve anything. Accreditation. So one of the things I want to make sure is that when companies employ, I know this is narrow, just talking about architects and engineers, taking on board what other people have said, but if we just kind of keep to that to start with, we need somebody that accredits business and IT, architects and engineers. So when companies employ an architect, they know they're a goddamn architect. They know they're not just a very experienced engineer. Because if you put an experienced engineer in an architect role, you're going to get serious problems. And if you put someone who's actually an architect at heart, but you put him in an engineering role, you're probably going to get serious problems. And I think part of that is why still 70% of all projects fail. Research into best practices, what does it mean to be an architect and engineer, where's that going, what new things can we think of to help those people with their jobs, communities, yada yada yada, and events that everybody kind of talks about. What can we do? Maybe a petition to get people involved to start this and to publicize it. To create an environment where real architects and engineers will want to subject themselves to scrutiny. I mean, I call myself an architect and an engineer, but if there was a body that said, okay, come to us, we'll examine you, we'll tell you, we'll give you a credential whether you're an architect or an engineer, and I think to myself, I might not be an architect, I would still want to go to that body and get a judgment. And if I'm not an architect, then I want to know why I'm not an architect, and then for what things I need to be an architect. I don't think I'm particularly bothered about people who are currently called an architect and don't really care about architecture. They're happy to be called an architect because they get paid more money. Not sure you can help those people potentially. Those people are going to rail against a body that actually judges architects because they know they're not going to be judged to be an architect or an engineer.
Kevin?
Yep.
It's Chris Hills. That exists already.
What's that?
Architects legally are only architects according to the Royal Institute of British Architects.
Yeah, okay. So
engineers come under the Engineering Council. So you have chartered engineers and architects who are already classified.
I think it's worthwhile just realising that this is a global audience, and it's what happens in the UK isn't necessarily what's happening in other jurisdictions.
Quite.
Yep. I take your point. I've literally spoken to the Institute of Architects about maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, because somebody made the point on a LinkedIn group, oh, Kevin, how can you call yourself an architect? You're breaking the law. You're not allowed. My view was, so long as I'm not promoting myself as a building architect, I can use the word architect. We've been using the word architect in IT for years and no one has a problem. So I spoke to the Institute of Architects and they said, yes, if you're not using the word architect to promote yourself as a building architect, that's not a problem. You can call yourself an enterprise architect, a technical architect. So that's not, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, oh, that's fine. That's the architect one. What about the engineer, though?
Engineering one, not 100% sure. If there's a group that says we will certify software engineers, I'm happy to use them, but I don't think there is. There is an institute of engineers. Someone sent me a link. Might have been you or someone else.
Well, the engineering council issues chartered engineer.
Yeah, but they don't issue chartered engineer for software engineering, do they?
I'm a software engineer.
Well, so am I.
Chartered IT professional. That's in, which you can get
that's the BCS. Yeah, that's just them though.
Well, yeah.
Less said about them, the better.
You might say that. Other people might say other things. Other people might say what you've just put forward is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, though, the chartered the CEng, as far as I know, is also validated across many other jurisdictions because they worked hard on that. That's sort of paired up with professional engineer in the States and stuff in South Africa, Canada.
That can be issued by the BCS and the IET in the UK.
Yeah, and a whole load of others, yeah.
We also have the Software Engineering Institute, and we also have IEEE as other certifying bodies. I think we have. I think it's an interesting question, Kevin. What you were, I'm starting to believe you want to create an organization that's going to help accredit or certify that people who call themselves enterprise architects are in fact enterprise architects.
No. I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not reducing my viewpoint to only enterprise architecture or architects. My domain of interest is the transformation of enterprises.
Because I was thinking based on that premise, instead of calling the organization by the titles of the people working inside it, like enterprise architects and engineers, maybe we should be the global association of architectural transformation or something, because we're focusing, is there a desire to focus on the outcome that we want to achieve as opposed to the skill set to get there? And I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I think this initial conversation should help align us in what the overall intent is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I had been thinking in the last week that the name of this. What? Shut up, stupid thing. IT that talks to you when you don't want it to.
Remember, it was developed by an enterprise architect and an engineer.
In the past week or so, I had been thinking, is this a good name, the Global Association of Enterprise Architects and Engineers? My domain is the transformation of enterprises. That's definitely my domain. And if you've read anything about POET, that is the domain. It's not just enterprise architecture. However, I was kind of pulled between, that's really what I want to do, but is that too big? So maybe I need to reduce it. I don't want to reduce it to enterprise architecture. I don't even want to reduce it to architecture. So let's concentrate on architecture and engineering, because that's at the core of the analysis and design of all information, business models, operating models, technical models, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, it sounds maybe I should be more bold and say no. It's an association for people working to transform enterprises, not just enterprise architects and engineers.
But I would add the caveat in there, using an architectural approach. I think that's key, because there are so many ways of doing transformation. And, so if we can refine it and use an architectural approach, whichever framework.
Maybe it's enterprise transformation utilizing, sorry, get this GIF out of the way, utilizing core disciplines.
Architectural disciplines,
which is the disciplines of architecture and engineering, which underpin analysis and design, but also configuration management, requirements management, change management, project management, etc., etc., etc.
That would differentiate us from the some of the other approaches like Agile, because all of this we're talking about will absolutely hurt the head of an Agile, of a scaled Agile framework kind of person.
Yeah, you see, the main thing I see, I mean, I've grown up, and I'm sure a lot of you have grown up also. There are different factions involved in enterprise transformation. That sometimes they're adversarial, sometimes they work in conjunction with each other, but everybody exists in their own pond. You can be in the Agile pond or the EA pond or the project management pond or whatever. What I want to do, and this was the basis of Poet, is to bring together and provide an overarching framework and association and body and organizational thing around all of those things. Because you can have an organization that's great at project management, great at Agile, great at architecture, great at this, great at that, but they don't hang together. Do you know what I mean? I want to optimize the whole, whereas everybody else is optimizing the parts, and they're optimizing the parts for valid reasons. They're optimizing the parts because that's the part they're in and that's the part they want to optimize. I've done that. That's what I did. I did that with writing software. I did that with architecting software. I've done that with enterprise architecture. I wanted to make enterprise architecture better. That's why I created PIAF. But then I looked at EA and said, well, where does EA fit in? What's more important? EA is not EA for EA's sake. Where does EA fit in? EA fits in this bigger ecosystem, this transformation ecosystem that takes us from a business strategy on one hand to deployed change on the other. And the bits in the middle are not really important. EA is not important. SA is not important. Agile is not important. What's important is the whole.
I think so. What you're talking about, Kevin, is digital twin. Imagine
No,
you have a building.
no. I will not allow you to use the word digital. Nothing.
Well, basically, you want to capture all the information about your business, right? So you have basically, I think what's important to have a framework to basically frame it up. What make up the business? And you want to assign authority, like for example, PM, you will have PM bot that will capture those project management information, right? So every group will have the best practice. Basically, you want how to basically glue everything together in one holistic way.
Correct.
So, I mean, basically it's managing those information or the data. The holy grail is the data management. You have to have a framework that talk about all those things.
Yeah, correct. It's the data, but it's not only the data. It's the methods, the processes by which that data is created and maintained, the culture that the people who are operating those processes are operating within, and the tools, which is where MACE comes from in Poet and PIAF. So, yeah, sorry, I don't like this digital word because people put the word digital on the front of everything in the same way they put the word architecture. So apologies, because I tend to react to these things. I mean, I'm going to stop talking now. You got another 45 minutes to talk. You all talk. I would like somebody to say and put their name forward and say, I want to take this forward. You see, I'm not a good organizer. I'm too overbearing. I'm too reactionary in my thinking. I'm too off the wall in my thinking. I'm not the kind of person, I don't know if you know things like Belbin and MBTI and, you know, all those personality types, right? I'm not a team player. I'm an off the wall thinker who will think deeply about things. But if you get offended by me, I'm sorry, but that's the kind of person I am. And I'm not the kind of person to lead things like this. I'm the kind of person to think that maybe this is what we need, but I'm not the person to lead this kind of thing. So if someone is happy to step forward and say, you know what, I think you've got a bit of a, you know, a bit of a nugget of some idea here, I'm going to take it forward. I'm going to organize some more meetings. I'm going to make some notes. I'm just going to try and get some consensus. I'll be absolutely happy. And I can sit in the sidelines and throw my incendiaries into the center every now and again and throw my bombs off. And some of my stuff people will listen to, and some of my stuff people will say, well, that's stupid, piss off, you're an idiot. And that's fine. But I'm not the person to lead this.
I think you've done a good job of getting it started, at least finding several people who are interested in the same ideas that you've been working on. I know I've been kind of going on a parallel path as I've been trying to work with transformations inside various corporations that I've worked at, and doing it in a very grassroots type of way. And I agree with you. I don't want to put digital on anything. It's almost like when the internet came out and everybody was cyber everything. Everything was a cyber something.
Yeah.
And now everybody wants to be a digital architect or digital marketing or digital transformation. You know, what does that actually mean? Some of us that have been around a long time, digital meant that it worked on a computer versus analog where you wrote it down.
Well, you can just hit Google if you want to find out what digital transformation means. Just coming back to the kind of the premise for this group, Kevin, I was interested to know about where the AEA fits in, the Association of Enterprise Architects. I see you've got a bit about the EA BOC and so on, and maybe you talked about the AEA, which, as I understand it, was originally something like the Open Group Enterprise Architects or something like that, and then they broke off. I'm in the AEA, and I've been trying to find out who's behind it, how the organisation runs, and so on. It seems like there's kind of it's quite opaque when it comes to.
Yeah, it's run by the Open Group. It's owned and run by the Open Group. But they pretend they don't own and run it. The original guy who ran it, I forgot what his name is, and he resigned. He was replaced by another guy whose name I forget, but he was another guy from the Open Group. I mean, if the GAE, you know, I would post PF things, you know, on the GAE group on LinkedIn, and people would complain. You're not allowed to post things about PF on this group. But of course, if you posted something about TOGAF on the group, then nobody had a problem. I mean, if I ran a PF group and people posted things about TOGAF on my group, I wouldn't tell them you're not allowed to post TOGAF things. I mean, it's ridiculous, this world we live in of suppression.
I kind of I support the aims that you've outlined here, especially about the label that people use and having a name for the profession that means something, the title that means something in terms of whether it's down to, you know, code of ethics or code of practice or ability to perform, you know, in various areas of capability. But I do think that there's a branding problem here. There's a general understanding outside the community, and they're the people. They're our, if you like, our customers or our clients. The people have to understand what it is we're doing. And if we come out with yet another organisation when there's already sort of 3 or 4 different ones, it just kind of, I think we run the risk that it just gets lost in the noise as to saying, well, what's the difference between, you know, someone who's got TOGAF and someone who's got this other certification and someone who's got, you know, PF or whatever it is. So I do wonder if there's more chance of success by, if you like, pooling efforts or taking over another group rather than starting up, you know, from fresh.
Yeah, no, I absolutely take your point, and I make the same point to people who tell me they're going to start a new enterprise architecture group on LinkedIn. I'd say, but there are already 50 groups. What's the point of another one? You're just fragmenting. So I actually take your point. FIPO, as I understand it, they had the open group involved, but then they had a falling out because the open group wanted to do something that FIPO didn't want to do because FIPO wanted to keep things pure, and so the open group told them to sod off. MITA, who took over the EA BOC, then I think they kicked out the IEEE, if you can believe that, or the people who are on the board of MITA, EA BOC, from IEEE, resigned because it was just being turned into a, another ownership shop. So I haven't got a solution to your problem. I completely take on board, the problem that you're saying, and I wouldn't say, you see, I don't want to kill TOGAF. I don't want to kill Agile. I don't want to kill anything. But I think we need something that pulls everything together, because that's the problem. I mean, we've got TOGAF, we've got the AEA, we've got the ISACA, we've got all of these groups, which are all fantastic and everything's wonderful. Okay, so kudos to all of that, and it's all wonderful, and there are as many members and thousands of people in training TOGAF, etc., etc., etc. However, I'm a CEO of an organization, and in 1980, 70% of my transformation projects failed. And here I am in 2019, 70% of my transformation projects still fail. Why? And I think the key thing is because people want to own parts of that domain. They want to own the EA space. They want to own the SA space or the PM space. Whilst they're trying to improve their own little boxes, they're not taking what I would say an architect's view of this, which is looking at the bigger picture and saying, well, hello, guys, you know what? EA BOC, PM BOC, AEA, FIPO, CAP, EA BOC, all of these things. What's the bigger canvas on which you are all projecting yourselves? Where's this bigger canvas? And it's because it's this bigger canvas that companies care about. Me as a CEO, I don't give a fuck about any of these little things. All I know is I have a strategy, and from my strategy, I want my enterprise to change, and I want to change it. I want to make sure that it gets changed in an effective, efficient, agile, and sustainable way. That's it. But no one is looking at this whole transformation domain. They're just all looking at the parts.
Maybe try not to use the word architect then. At one organization, I've been called business planner. So it could be enterprise planner.
I mean, basically, you're limiting yourself to enterprise planning, you see. I completely take on board the criticism that the whole name of this organization is potentially completely wrong. It should be called the Global Association of Enterprise Transformation Workers. In fact, one of the things that I had created was what's called the Enterprise Transformation Workers Union. Because I know there's negatives and positives related to unions, but one of I have two customers in my head, right? One customer is the CEO and the stakeholders of organizations who just want change to be effective, efficient, sustainable, and agile. That's one customer. The other customer are all of the people, which includes us, that live and work within the domain of enterprise transformation that try and make that happen. I believe that, I don't know if you'll find people that agree with me and disagree with me, but from my point of view, it's been very, very, very painful working in that domain for 40 years. There are no standards, there's no common terminology. Politics is rife, bullying goes on, stupid decisions get made and nobody gives a shit. the number of times I've gone at home at night and laid in bed at night till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning thinking, my God, why are we doing this? Everybody knows it's goddamn stupid. Why the fucking hell are we doing this? So actually, one of the things, I bought the domain name, etwu.org, the Enterprise Transformation Workers Union. Now it's just a name, and, you know, I'm just trying to give you a flavor of what's in my head and what's in my heart. I want the people who own enterprises to be able to lever a profession that helps them transform their enterprises in an effective, efficient, sustainable, and agile way. And I want to create a profession whereby the people that work in this enterprise transformation domain can go home at night in the knowledge of a job well done and sit down, fold their arms, look at the TV and think to themselves, you know what, I made a difference today. Rather than, you know what, I spent the last 6 months writing a document or working on some software or writing a process or working on a strategy, and it's just been thrown in the bin. Or I've just done this work and I know it's going to be wasting millions of pounds and it won't deliver what the business wants and it's all going to be terrible, all that kind of stuff. So maybe in people's minds, that's the starting point. There are two customers: CEOs who want to transform companies and people who work in the transformation domain.
Kevin, for one, I like the name, because really, like, if the people or the organization is not ready to transform, where, you know, there's no point to talk about what framework, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, I see a lot of organizations, people are pushing down TOGAF or whatever framework. They're not even ready. They not even have appetite for change. So why even doing that? So Enterprise Transformation Worker Union, I think is very good. So like basically it's like all the people who's going to be working in business transformation. And that's, we can provide, you know, holistically what that should look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the domain of interest is definitely enterprise transformation. And when I say transformation, maybe I should just so everyone's clear, I'm not, again, I'm not pushing PF or POET or anything. You want to throw everything away that I've written, I don't care, that's fine. I'm just using what I've written to illustrate what I'm talking about. And one of the things I reckon is that every single enterprise is divided into 4 fundamentally, strategically different parts. And the reason these parts, I've made these parts the parts, is because they are utterly different. They have different structure, different culture, different tools, different ways of thinking, different everything. So the direction part of the enterprise is that part of the enterprise which sets the direction for all the other parts. That is generally the board, the senior stakeholders, the executive management. Operation is the part of the enterprise which exists to perform whatever that enterprise was created for. So that could be healthcare, drilling oil wells, banking, whatever, I don't care. The transformation part of the organization is a part that only exists to transform the other parts of the organization. So they might have a strategy, but the operations part of the organization is not in the state in order to deliver the strategy. So we have to change or transform the operations part of the organization. When I use the word transformation, I'm not talking about any, it doesn't mean large change or small change or a special type of change. I'm just using the word transformation to mean change, any type of change. And then there's the support part of the organization, which essentially sorts out problems: IT problems, business problems, HR problems, finance problems. You have a problem, you call support, you get a ticket, it gets managed through first line, second line, it might get passed to operations, third line, it might get passed to transformation, third line, whatever. So these are 4 fundamental parts. This transformation domain is the domain that I've worked in all my life. It starts with enterprise architecture at the top, which is the strategic, not the strategic, the you know, what you call road mapping, the part that creates the portfolio of projects and programs. Then the rest of the transformation domain is the execution of those projects and programs to deliver the change that the road mapping work created based on the direction set by the direction part of the organization. So when I say transformation, I'm talking about this part of the organization, the people who work in it, and then the stakeholders who are driving it. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm just ranting and raving a bit.
That doesn't sound like you at all.
Yeah, you see, that's what I do. I need someone to say, sometimes, you know, everybody else shut up and listen to Kevin, but then sometimes I need somebody to say, Kevin, shut the fuck up. Now we're going to talk about something else.
So how about, Kevin, if you give me 5 minutes to show you something else I'm involved in that may have relevance. So if I can share.
Yeah.
My
can you
screen.
give me a 2-minute comfort break?
Okay.
I'll be back in 2 minutes.
While Kevin's off, one of the things I was thinking with Kevin saying about somebody else taking charge on this, I think it's a little premature for anybody to take charge. And I think it's something where, you know, none of us probably know each other that well as a group. And it seems to me that one of the good ideas would be for there to be some kind of central place where we can discuss these things without having to all get together. So whether that's a wiki page where we go through and make edits and tweaks, or a discussion group or something along that line. I don't know if anybody else agrees.
Yes, I do.
It seems to me that it would be a good idea just to nail down a few things.
Yeah. Nowadays, you don't need to face-to-face meeting anymore.
No.
Yeah, definitely the real time dialogue is useful, but there needs to be something else, some other channel,
Exactly.
like a chat room and a wiki, that sort of.
I'm laughing because I'm on the board of directors of 2 different organizations, and they don't like having any virtual meetings. I just traveled from Baltimore to Long Beach for a 1.5-day meeting that could have been done remotely.
Wow.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can pull something together. I'm not on a contract at the moment, so I'm quite happy to put a few hours in. I'll see if I can get something together where we can share without necessarily everybody else being able to jump in. But I guess if somebody wants to register, if you want to give names out, yeah, then personally, I don't see any problem with that.
Cool. That sounds good.
Does anybody find that the enterprise architect is kind of overly used, the term? Maybe you talk to 10 people, you might have 20 different definitions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's no universal meaning for it. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is a broad term in the way that, you know, if you talk about a project manager, that could mean many different things. At its heart, you know, it might have a particular meaning, but it always depends on the role, which depends on the organizational structure and operating model and all those other things.
I would say that if you ask 20 enterprise architects what enterprise architecture is, the reason you get 20 answers is because that 19 of them are not enterprise architects.
That's true.
I'll second that, but with the addition that even as somebody who thinks he's an enterprise architect, I'm probably not.
Yeah. On the same here.
Well, you know, it's been interesting. I've been in the business at least as long as you have, you know, enterprise architecture has had different meanings, and the meanings change almost on a project by project basis, from what I've seen. You know, an enterprise architect, in theory, should be the guy that sits between business and IT and helps do the translations between the two so that everybody's focused in the same direction. But then a lot of times people say, no, an enterprise architect is the lead of all of the solutions architects. and that it's only solutions based and it's not strategic based. So, enterprise architecture means whatever somebody wants it to mean.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It shouldn't be. It's I want a world where, in the same way, when you hire an architect for your building, you know what you're getting. Well, you don't know what you're getting, but you know that you're getting a building architect. At the moment, when you hire an enterprise architect, you have no idea whether you're getting an enterprise architect or not. All you know is you're getting someone who's accepts the amount of money that you want to pay them. Who was it that wanted to show something? I've stopped sharing my screen. If somebody wanted someone else.
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to share a screen, but it's not accepting.
I've stopped sharing my screen now. So, oh wait a minute. Do I need to?
You might need to approve.
I'll make you.
You may not be sharing the screen, but we're certainly getting a lovely big picture of you, Kevin.
Good. I've just made you the host, Chuck.
I don't know if that's going to matter, but let me try again. Wow, it's not letting me share my screen.
What's it saying?
Nothing. It won't accept the button. I tell you what, keep talking, and I'm going to jump out and jump back in, and then I'll try again.
Okay.
One of the things about Architect is that they have a fairly strict method of qualification and certification. So that when you get an architect, you know they're qualified to do a certain job at a certain level.
Yep.
You may not like what they design for you, and my God, there are some hideous buildings out there, but you do know they're at a certain level of competency. I think that's part of the problem. We're all sort of saying we have no real idea what an enterprise architect is.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one thing. So, and sadly, it's going to come down to trying to get a definition that's narrow enough to be sensible, but wide enough to be one that the majority are going to accept. Well, that's part of your problem, is knowing what you're going for. Because you invited me into this, but I'm definitely not an enterprise architect.
Well, that's fine. You still have a voice.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying I'm not actually an enterprise architect. So perhaps I'm looking at this from a side removed. Most of the projects I work on I do design, but it's a lot smaller than the sort of things you're working on. So, yeah, looking at it from one side. The other thing you mentioned, the Enterprise Transformation Workers Union. The words workers and union are going to scare the living daylights out of any management whatsoever.
I know.
They're going to think you're a bunch of Marxist Bolsheviks. No, but yeah, and the thing is, because in fact, a union, or to give it its full name, is a trade union.
Yeah.
And you were talking profession.
Yeah.
So there tends to be a grey line between profession and trade union. So I think leaving workers union off would be a good thing, because it's going to give a different connotation to that of architect, as opposed to bricklayers are a trade, carpenters are a trade, architects are a profession. And unfortunately, this comes down to marketing perception. It's going to mean different things in different parts of the world. And it's going to have to tread carefully to get something that works for everybody without frightening off the wrong people or the right people.
Yeah, I didn't cover it while we allow Chuck to see if he can dial in again and take control in the 21st century. One of the things I wanted to talk about, or just to let you know of, oh God, I'm not going to find it. So I worked for SEMA, or AICPA, for about 2 months until they sacked me. Because I didn't fit in culturally. Unfortunately, I was committed to telling them the truth about things, and they really didn't like that. But while I was there, I noticed that they had a. Let's see if I can find it. I'm probably going to search and not find it at all.
So is this a picture of the EA pond?
Oh,
that looks like somewhere in the lakes.
February. Sorry, speak among yourselves while I'm trying to look for something here. All I was going to say was CIMA, AICPA, they have a charter, a Queen's Charter. And I'm going to try and transcribe it and convert it into the same words, because it sort of seemed to be talking about what I'm talking about, but in terms of management consultant or management accounting, rather than engineering or transformation or any of those things. But it's like, we support the profession, and we have professional standards, and we exist to make sure that the customers get what they want. Oh, I'll see if I can find it. Stop waffling, Kevin.
The other thing I've noticed, because I've run into similar problems to yourself in areas I've worked, that one of the things seems to be project management. I sort of jotted that down earlier on when you were looking at the problem domains. And the whole lot comes under awful project management. And that's the trouble a lot of the time. Individually, different professions and trades can do really good things, but they're working under a project management system that is absolutely appalling. And that's what causes the problems.
I have to agree with you there. Throughout my entire career, the only thing that has caused things to fail, in my opinion, was either the formulations of the projects in the first place, which was enterprise architecture, or the management of those projects. So many projects I've worked on were crap and failed because of the project management. And one of the things in my stuff that I try and teach people is that this triangular method of managing projects, where a project manager sits at the top and owns everything, and then the business analyst and the technical analyst sits below him, is ridiculous, because what you end up with is timescales being met, but not what you wanted delivered. So yeah, I can
exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
this is part of the problem, and this happens at all levels. So it's not just enterprise architecture.
Yeah.
It's in the development phase and other phases. It's hurry up, and a lot of the time, this is something I actually lecture on when I do the things on the software and embedded systems development. It's a case of they want to see something happening. So they want to rush you along to do something so there's visible, rather than realizing that if you get it all sorted out, what you're delivering is, and part of this problem is they don't always know what they want. So what they say to you is, you mentioned timescales. They'll give you half a spec and say we can fix it later.
Yeah,
and this is the trouble.
Can you guys see my screen now?
The future is bright.
The future is bright.
The future is orange.
You can't say that.
So let me take 3 minutes and just tell you a little bit about another association I've been a part of for 27 years. In 1992, I was working at the National Security Agency in the training department, and I was developing and delivering training on broad area networking, installation and maintenance. And I joined and became professionalized as an education and training officer. And as part of that, I joined this association. And this association is interesting because it's not about training, it's about human performance, and it's about looking at all of the facets of human performance and how can we get people to mastery. Okay, so that's the sound bite of what this association is about. But what's interesting is that the journey that you're starting today, Kevin, is a lot like the journey that ISPI took over the last 27 years. We actually started out as the National Society for Programmed Instruction. And if you've ever done Merrill readers when you were in elementary school to learn how to read, where you couldn't go to the next module until you mastered the previous module, that's how we started out. And so one of the tough things that we had to figure out is defining what is performance improvement. And I think we're going to have to figure out, and we're going to have to write a page like this and define exactly what enterprise transformation is. And I've actually been having this side conversation with another enterprise architect who's been a good friend of mine for 15 years. And we're struggling with this, and we're struggling with explaining this to agencies and organizations as well. Enterprise architecture is a lot like knowledge management. You get 20 people in a room, you end up with 25 different definitions. So I think for us, we're going to have to figure out what enterprise transformation means here. Then one of the interesting things that ISPI did was it created 10 standards. And I think that this may be something that we want to define even before we name the organization. In fact, everything I'm describing, we want to do before we name the organization. So we want to define what is this transformation, enterprise transformation. We may want to define what are the standards for our organization, whether it's a society or an association can be a debate of a different day. And then they also have a code of ethics. And I think a lot of the reasoning behind why you want to start this, at least from my interpretation of what you're saying, is because it doesn't seem to be a code of ethics now. Anybody can tag a title of enterprise architect, enterprise transformation specialist, digital transformation specialist, or whatever. And there really is no code of ethics for those people to abide by. And then finally, ISPI, and I've been a certified performance technologist, and I had to go through formal certification for this. Actually, since 2002, I think, when it started, I've had to go through this process. So we can very well mature into a level where we can offer a certification of sorts. And I don't want to bore you with the details of the accreditation process, but I can tell you I'm 98% sure that the model that they use can be adapted to what we do. And it's largely around these 10 standards and proving that you actually can perform through work product examples, largely through work product and performance, proving that you can do these 10 things. And then you get certified. And then you have to recertify every 3 years. In fact,
so do you think you would have, okay, 10 standards like that, but are you saying, for example, if we're looking at the whole of the enterprise transformation domain, we would have 10 standards for project managers, 10 standards for change managers, 10 standards for architects, 10 standards for software developers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, actually, I would turn that model 90 degrees, and I would say that each of these standards might be applicable to a facet.
Yes, I like it.
So standard number 1 might be project management. Standard number 2 might be architectural approach. Standard number 3 might be business analysis. I mean, we could choose different words and we can decide what those will be, but these 10 standards actually form the longitudinal process for doing performance improvement.
And maybe if you were going to have 10 standards, actually, though, the 10 standards would be the standards that apply.
So now that is something that isn't supported.
What?
But I'll put it on my list to learn about.
Oh, shut up. Bixby's decided to jump into the conversation for some reason. Sorry. I hate getting my brain distracted because I'm a bit I'm Asperger's, so I get distracted easily. So let me rewind my brain. Right. So, yeah, 1 standard for each discipline, we could do that. But at the same time, or instead, or in cohorts with that, you have 10 standards that apply regardless of what discipline.
And it would also may not include just disciplines. It might include the different aspects of the architecture, the architectural component. There may be a business view, a functional or systems view, a data view, a technical view. And so the standard would be applying a specific approach and demonstrating that you actually have the skills to do that or have done that. In this world of ISPI, I believe you have to meet at least 7 of the standards to be accredited, and 3, so we don't expect everybody to do everything perfect. So within the 10, and maybe we don't have 10, maybe there's 7 for us, or 5 or 6, I don't know what that number is, but I think that using ISPI as a model, we need to define what we mean by enterprise transformation. We need to come up with some standards, maybe even a code of ethics, and then we can name the organization. Once, structure follows strategy. So once we think through what the strategy is, then we can structure the organization. And whether it's a society, I personally, I like society better than association because it gives it a much more, a tighter coupling. An association implies to me, at least, a more loosely coupled organization, as opposed to a society who's committed to a set of standards, to a code of ethics, and it's a society. There's another very strong society, international, for engineers, I believe. Isn't there a society for something engineers? But anyway, we can decide that later. But the idea is defining, because I'm telling you, it could take months for us to just come to an agreement on the definition of enterprise transformation and the components of that. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that I've been, like I say, a part of this for 27 years. So
I mean, I've never created an association or a society or any of these things, and I'm all for reusing things and not inventing the wheel. If there's a kind of a structure like this ISPI that we can use and to fundamentally copy it, or copy the structure of the information, but then go through the information and change the domain, essentially. Obviously, some things are not going to apply. You delete those and maybe you want to add other things, but probably a lot of it you could kind of essentially copy and repurpose.
Well, once we define these three things, at least we can leave certification for another day.
Yeah.
But at least defining these three core elements, then we can invite other people into the conversation to help, further define it, further break it down, and even to work on things like events and certifications. You can see we also have a very large volunteer cadre. For a number of years, I volunteered and I ran a committee at the national level on performance. Was called performance improvement in the community, basically applying applying the technology to nonprofits and helping nonprofits. But I mean, so you can mature into an awards process. You can become a resource library. I mean, these are things that are pretty pro forma in associations. But an old Army general once taught me to crawl, walk, then run. So I think in the crawl state, just defining these three elements about what is it we're going to be about, what possibly are some standards, and then maybe a code of ethics. Even before we name the organization is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah. I think the name is irrelevant at this point.
Anyway, that's I just wanted to show you that as an example. And it's ispi.org if you want to write that down. Very simple. You can go check them out.
This is, just for everyone's knowledge, this is being recorded, so I'll post a link to it. I'll upload it to YouTube. So if people want to jump back on those things that you've pointed out, we can do. I know I'm certainly going to do that.
We used to be, I think, about 12 or 14,000 members. I think we're down to about 8,000 or 9,000 now. But again, this association has its struggles, just as AEA does, just as knowledge management organizations have their struggle defining who they are and what they can do and what their value is. I think that any time that we can spend focusing on the two customer sets that you called out, the CEOs and the practitioners, I think we'll have maybe a little bit easier time ramping up and attracting people who want to be in our tribe. So, so that's my story. You have control back.
Okay, I have control. I'm not a pilot, but I know. I used to work on a flight simulator. Okay, so it's sort of 5 minutes to the projected end of this conversation. Does anybody else, shall we go around? Anyone can say anything with what they want to do. What I'm kind of looking for is, how do people think we can move this forward? Chuck's just given me some pointers to go through that stuff and maybe jot down what I think the principles are, what I think things should be. But if people could think about what do they think needs to happen going forward, and maybe what they could do, what they could think about, if it means just thinking about things or jotting some things down, or if you don't want to do that, just, what's your opinion before we close the call in the next 15 minutes?
Well, no, one of the things that I've done at a couple of different companies is I created what I call a community of practice. And I had a community of practice enterprise architecture or a community of practice architecture and a community of practice data. So anybody who considered themselves an architect would show up at the community of practice. Now this is inside an organization, so that they could, one, meet each other, two, they could start discussing new technologies, new things, new skunk works that they're working on, some black projects that they were working on, and start collaborating amongst the groups. And so we had community practice data, community practice architecture. And I kind of see this moving in that same type of way with anybody that's community of practice, enterprise transformation, or something along those lines. Just because it's, you know, the problem with accreditations with people in, you know, software architects is that the software changes rapidly, especially with our cloud adaptations. You know, if you go to AWS, anytime you go to AWS, they have new products, new ways of doing things. They've called things differently. Azure calls things differently. Google calls things differently. And then private clouds are all called things differently. And so it's really hard to have one standard. So you have to have a standard of a theory, not an actual name that is a standard. I don't know if I made my point or not.
Yeah, you did, and around here. And I do agree that we should go to standardize the profession and not be biased to specific technologies because of this issue. Every technology has their own language, and this doesn't work for us to try to standardize them. That's why I believe by following the previous suggestion to have some capabilities that you must undergo in order to get certified in the profession rather than in a specific product. Actually, this is basically the way IBM does. This is my certification on IBM, and this is the way they do. But basically, they use 18 of these capabilities just for the core. I mean, not specifically to software or infrastructure or enterprise or business.
I'm gonna. It's Mark Heseltine here. I'm going to jump off shortly. I support the idea of codifying a profession, and I'm kind of open as to what the vehicle should be for that. I just reiterate what I said earlier, that we need to consider who the consumers are for this and keep things very simple for them. You know, something like a chartered enterprise architect would be a lot simpler for someone to understand than a long-winded name that maybe doesn't reflect what they perceive, you know, the role or the function, to the area of knowledge to be. I also like to sort out this EA body of knowledge thing. I don't find it acceptable that it was hijacked and then basically closed off and has been allowed to languish and die. Okay, that's all.
Well, MITRE actually owns the trademark now, so that may present some problems.
Yeah, MITRE.
Yes,
Well,
we may have to think of something different from body of knowledge to, you know, to a different name for it.
The ET BOC.
Yep. For example. Yep.
Yep.
Hurry up! Grab that domain, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to say quick. I have a lot of detail.
To release the trademark.
Yeah, I have a lot of story behind. Sorry, Mark, you're talking. Carry on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, or work on MITRE to get them to release the trademark, since they're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, they won't. I've got a whole story as to how MITRE got the trademark and how they got the domain name and how they screwed everybody who was involved with it, including me, Nick Malik from Microsoft, and a lot of other people. And once they've got it, then they did nothing with it. But, yeah, so.
Thanks for setting it up.
Next. God, look at my stomach. Because my camera's down there.
Yeah, we have to.
Sorry, guys.
You missed it because you were on your comfort break. I've offered to put up a website of some sort where we can go and thrash a lot of these things out on a forum. So that way we don't have to try and do this all in one go. We can spend the next month or so just thrashing things out. And as decisions get made, then we can put it together. I think that takes a lot of the pressure off as well on the whole idea of that you don't want to do this, that you're happy to be the instigator, but maybe none of us want to do this. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
That's it's something. So I think it just makes sense for us to all get a good idea of who we are, what we're capable of. Can we come up with some good ideas? Are they worth taking forward? Just like any other project, just like any other EA concern that we were putting together.
Yeah, much appreciated. If you've got something you can set up so we can meet asynchronously, as it were, and have discussions and put table ideas and see which ones stick, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it's just a simple WordPress site or something like that probably makes the most sense. It's not like it has to be kept for posterity or anything like that. It's just so that we can get our initial ideas down and we can thrash them through and figure out what's good, what's bad, and so on.
Can you do that all on your own, or do you need something from me? Do you need a domain name, or do you need anything?
No, so WordPress itself has a free option. I'll just set something up on there, and then, as I said, we can use that as a starting point. If we think we want to keep it, we can export it from there. It's fine.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Next.
Are you going to publish the emails of everybody that joined this conference so that we can interact with one another?
I'm happy to do that if everyone else is. So really, that would mean me trying to contact everyone and finding out if everyone is happy, and I'll just do it.
They can always send it. They can always send it to the spam folder if they don't like it.
Yeah. I'll email everyone with everyone else's email address. I think there were 48 people who accepted or who was on the invitation for this call, and I think we had 16 people. So yeah, I'll just email everyone.
Well, I, for one, appreciate you trying to kickstart this effort.
Well, it's only by people like you being involved that anything is going to go forward from this. So thanks to you and the rest of the people on the call.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to bail off, but I think it's been good. I think we've got at least a way forward, and look forward to sort of being involved in the next stages.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Cheers, guys.
So I guess we needed a project manager here to help us get this thing going.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we also, so obviously Kevin and I are both Brits. We would like the American contingent to figure out how we make money out of all of this.
Yes, please.
Well, funny you should ask that. I've been on a campaign myself of getting people to understand what transformation is all about and how you can do it. And the conversations end up going to a CIO or a CFO level. And then you start having to talk about how do you get funding at that level. And it is very interesting. I have some war stories that I would be glad to talk about over a pint or two.
We'll have to wait a couple of days until after March 29th to see what happens.
And if I come straight back to the US right now, but I'm less than 2 days back. I think the customs might start becoming suspicious.
As long as you don't go through the southern border, you're all right. Oh my!
I thought it was the other way around. I thought
Southern border anymore, do you? Anyone else?
I have a colleague that used to say the project manager is the best friend of the architect. It's like, come on, jump, roll, talk. We need one of them.
Well, that's you know, I've got so many volunteer things right now. I can help, but I just can't. I can't. You know, I'm a project manager by trade as well, and I think that if we start off. Yeah, I captured that screenshot, Kevin. That's going up on LinkedIn. So's the belly one. I think the first step of the enterprise transformation effort is going to be the physical fitness program for enterprise transformation.
True.
The Global Association for Physical Fitness for Enterprise Architects.
That domain name's going to be available, definitely.
Well, actually,
I have to be careful because the Enterprise Architect Union may have a problem with that.
Actually, it's not bad. Call it fiscal fitness, because if you do transform your enterprise properly, you are going to be fiscally fit.
True.
A play on words there, gentlemen. I'm sorry.
Well, if it means anything, by the way, Kevin, I don't know if you can see me now. I've switched on my my camera.
I can.
But I actually specifically. So specifically because it was you on this, I thought I'd wear one of these T-shirts.
Yeah, I don't like that. My problem is I don't keep it to myself. Nice one. Anybody else?
Yeah, Kevin, this is Sridhar, and I like the idea, but I don't know how I could contribute. But it'll take a few days before I can really see where I can pitch in.
Okay. Just let everybody know I bought etboc.org and etboc.com. So, Aaron, if you need a domain to connect or anything, you can use one of those. Let me know and I'll give you the details.
Okay. As I said, yeah. For now, what I'll do is I'll just put something very basic up together. I'll take a few of my notes and take your notes as well, and we can just start them as topics.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, if anyone else has got anything to say, otherwise I'll close. Last 2 minutes or so. Anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Thank you all for attending. Maybe this will be a historical recording of the start of something wonderful. Wonderful for companies to stop wasting billions of dollars and decades on ridiculous and terrible transformation efforts, and also giving people the ability to go home at night and get a good night's sleep in the knowledge of a job well done. So thank you all for attending.
Well,
thank you all.
If they're going to save billions of dollars, I think they should give us at least half.
Yes, definitely.
That's how we make money. If we can, we'll take 3% of the savings that we do by doing the transformations.
Yeah.
That
sounds good to me.
At Walmart, and I saved them $20 million a year on one project. And I just told them all they could do is just pay me 2% of that, and I'd be happy. And somehow that didn't work.
I'll email everyone else's email addresses so we know who we are, and I'll send you a link. I'll upload this video onto YouTube if people want to jump back and see little bits of it. So if anyone else wants to say anything, doesn't want to say anything, that's it. Thank you all for your attendance, and hopefully we can move a little bit forward. If we can just move a little bit forward each time, then we're going to get somewhere.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, folks.